Stress, anxiety, fear. Within the past year, all these emotions can be used to express the impact online education and the pandemic at large have had on mental health, especially amongst college students. The American Psychological Association informs that Gen Z is 27% more likely to report their mental health as fair and poor compared to Generation X and Millennials. A study taken by the NCBI shows that 71% of college students have seen increases in stress and anxiety levels since the start of the pandemic, while a survey taken by Best Colleges reports that 95% of students have experienced negative symptoms in their mental health. And of that number, 48% of the students surveyed attribute those negative symptoms to online education. Throughout the past year, there's been an incredible emphasis on how to stay physically safe during the pandemic, but not nearly as much focus on how to stay sane during the pandemic. Most of us don't even know the extent to which college students are struggling with their mental health. If we want students to succeed, we need to understand how this time of uncertainty impacts their daily lives. It's one thing to know a statistic, but it's another to know the story. Today, I will be amplifying the voice and experience of 3 college students. Throughout these interviews, I expect to have my eyes open, to gain new insight on how the pandemic affects others differently than myself. And with that insight, I hope to have renewed motivation to promote change, to call for reform in how colleges serve and support their online students, and provide an environment that welcomes discussion on mental health and cultivates accessibility to various services. So right now I'm with Person A. I'm going to ask him all kinds of questions in regards to mental health, academic performance, and everything in between. So Person A, please describe how many hours before the pandemic and how many hours you worked on average per week if you did work.
All right. Before the pandemic, I took about an average of 3 classes, and I took about an average of 20 hours out of the week to work.
So to what degree did you feel like you were able to balance work life and school responsibilities before the pandemic?
I would say that it was about as well as I could do. It's just very difficult with uh, transportation, just having to go from school to home and to work did take some time out of the day.
So in the last year, as a result of the pandemic, have you reached out to engage in any RCCD services such as Puente or maybe a laptop rental or mental health services?
No, I have not.
And since you're not, like, how can the RCD services better reach you?
I guess through the student email.
What would make the pandemic and online school easier for you?
At this point, I don't think there's any way that they can make it easier for me. So I think it's about as easy as it can get.
Well, that's really good to hear then. Hopefully that means that it's been pretty bearable. And
Mhm.
how did the past year of online schooling affect how did it impact you in terms of financially, your mental health?
Well, in terms of finances, I did lose my job at the start of the pandemic scare, and so um, I had to find a new job, which I did end up succeeding. And as far as my academic performance goes, I mean, it's very tough. I've taken online classes before the pandemic, and it was difficult to balance them with a full schedule of physical in-school classes. But now that they're all online, I kind of figured out a, a beat that I can work to. And
Nice.
as far as my emotional and mental health goes, I have been able to interact with people, um, throughout the pandemic. So it's not like I'm isolated much.
Would you say that the load and the expectations of faculty were manageable and fair over the past year? Can you provide an example of two of how they were?
All right. So I would say that it depended on the class. Some classes were very manageable and fair by allowing me to take the time to review the course material, read it, study it, and then take a small quiz and maybe a discussion post, such as my political science class last semester. there were other classes, such as the math class I have this semester, which gives me a lot of busy work, and having to balance that with other difficult classes. It's just, it would be much better off if I were in person and I would just get the points for in being in attendance and listening to lectures that way.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. So, do you have any strategies that you developed over the past year to improve mental health?
Um, I would say that I just not really. It's just I've continued to socialize even during the pandemic, and I've been able to keep my sanity that way.
Nice. And so, do you feel the expectations of the RCCD faculty have been manageable in terms of like communication and cooperation to have professors and instructors been willing to, do their part?
Yes, a lot of them have been very communicative. Um, a few that weren't, but they were very small compared to the majority of them that were able to reach out and help. They understood that students were going through a lot with having these online classes and being isolated.
Nice. So, looking forward, do you plan on returning, say, at 100% capacity in the fall?
I would say yes and no. I definitely would like to be back on campus. The feeling of interacting with fellow students and being able to see the professor, talk with them on a person on a face-to-face level, it definitely feels different than how it is online. Um, One thing that I am concerned about, though, is whether or not the school will take steps towards mandatory vaccinations. If that is the case, I think I'd much rather stay online.
And so, is that like the only concern that you have as far as returning back to in-person education?
Yes.
What kind of support do you feel like? What kind of support do you feel you may need in order to be prepared for in-person education?
Support, I'd say, uh, from faculty or from people that run the school that understand that students have a freedom of choice and to honor that.
Can you offer any concluding thoughts, statements, recommendations for what can be done to better support you as a student?
Um, Honestly, not much. No, I can't think of anything.
Well, thank you personally for meeting with me and for sharing your voice and your experience. And hopefully, this can be put to good use in order to bring a lot of reform to online education and to be a beacon of making a lot of change for for a lot of students as a whole in regards to online education and moving forward in person learning in the fall. So thank you for being with me today and for answering my question. Person B, please describe how many courses you took on average before the pandemic and how many hours you worked on average per week.
Before the pandemic, I took about 4 classes and I worked about 20 hours.
And to what degree did you feel there was balance between that work life and that school responsibility that you had before the pandemic?
I felt like I had a pretty good balance, and I just felt pretty average.
Good. So, in the last year, had you reached out to engage in any RCCD student services such as Puente or the laptop rentals or any mental health services?
No, I have not.
And since you did not, how can the RCCD services better reach you?
I'm not really sure about that.
And what would make the pandemic and online schooling easier on you?
Probably less homework, that can get kind of stressful.
Yeah. Uh, how did the past year of online schooling affect your academic affect you in terms of like financially, emotionally, or your mental health?
It definitely impacted impacted my mental health to a certain extent. I think it was like rough for everyone.
Would you say that the load and the expectations of faculty were manageable and fair over the past year? And can you provide like an example?
Um, I'm not really sure.
It's totally fine to not have an answer to that kind of question, but to what degree has this uncertainty, the change in mental health, or possibly your financial status, to what degree influence the capacity for you to your educational goals?
I really had to study more for everything.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of students can relate to. Are there any strategies that you developed over the past year to improve your mental health?
Just taking time to take care of myself. Just,
What I do is kind of trying to make time maybe to take a walk around the park or reach out to people on social media, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you feel the expectations of the RCCD faculty have been manageable in terms of course and cooperation?
Uh, I think they did pretty well with that
I'm happy to hear that.
from my
So-
experience. Yeah.
Do you plan on returning to in-person learning at 100% capacity this fall? Why or why not?
No, because of the mandatory vaccines.
Okay, so what are some of your concerns on top of regarding the return in person? Is it just about the vaccine that might be mandated to take for students?
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of support do you feel you may need to be prepared for that transition back to in-person learning?
Not mandating vaccines for the students.
Okay. Providing the option to not take the vaccine?
Yes.
And can you offer any concluding thoughts, statements, or recommendations that can be done to better support you?
Giving students the option to choose what they can and cannot do with their health rather than mandating it all.
Okay, so this is like it's really focused for you on like the mental health and then the physical health then.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate your feedback and your responses. I respect your courage to really share your voice and to share your experience as a student in online education right now. So I wish you all the best in your educational journey, and thank you for hopping on here and answering these questions. And hopefully this can bring us closer to improving the system as it is right now within online education. So thank you, Person B.
Thank you.
And now I'm speaking with Person C, and so I'm gonna shoot all my questions regarding mental health, especially as a result of online schooling and online education over the past year. And so, Person C, hi, thank you for joining.
Hi, you are welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so please describe how many courses you took on average before the pandemic and how many hours you worked on average per week.
Before the pandemic, I think I took up to like around like 10 or 9 units overall. And I would work like my work schedule around school. Like I remember in fall before coronavirus, I would work Mondays, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then I think like in spring, I worked pretty much the same. I was part-time, so but you know how work can be. Sometimes they're like, hey, do you mind coming in today? So yeah.
Yeah, did you feel like that kind of balance between work life and school responsibilities before the pandemic was manageable?
Oh yeah, I think it was for sure. There was definitely a clear line of like work responsibilities and school responsibilities and then home responsibilities. There was definitely like a clear definition of what I needed to do and just kind of how I needed to like manage my time, I guess.
Okay. And so, like, did that change, like from before to now after the pandemic has begun?
Oh yeah, yeah, it's changed a lot. I remember when the pandemic first came out and everything, schools were moved on to online and everything began closing. I remember I was taking biology and I was having a really hard time with that class. Like I was
Yeah.
barely passing. And I remember I had like I think a big test coming up, and I remember getting a call from one of my managers, and he was like, "Hey, do you mind coming in?" And
Gosh.
I really wanted to be like, "No, I can't," because I'm like, this class is like literally killing me. But I was like, "Yes, I can be there," and so it was just a lot of it was stressful managing navigating between the whole transition of school being in person and then having it transition to online and then dealing with all the changes at work and with everything else going on too.
Yeah. Uh, could you identify like the variable that made it difficult than more difficult than it was before?
The variable meaning.
Like like was it just a result of going from in person to online, or like is it more specific, like because of going online, like maybe like your focus changed or your concentration changed?
Okay. Um, well, definitely when everything went online at first, I was like, okay, this is good. I get to stay home. I get to be with my animals. I don't have to like dress up or whatever and look presentable for school. So at the beginning it was great, and I would say that my like ability to focus was pretty good. But then as the fall as the fall rolled around and my ability to focus and maintain concentration began to deteriorate along with my ability to I guess my motivation to like I guess take on more classes. I noticed that like my the classes that I began to take as the pandemic progressed, it definitely started to decline. And so yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, in the past year, have you like reached out to engage in any RCCD student services, such as like maybe Puente or laptop rentals or mental health services?
The only one that I mainly use that I have been using before the pandemic and since the pandemic is the DRC, the Disabilities Resource Center. They've been really helpful. I don't think I would have been able to accomplish some of the difficult tasks and things that came up during the pandemic without their intervention and help. That's pretty much all I've been using. I know I probably should be using some of the mental health uh, systems or whatever, but I just haven't really felt like I or really looked into it, I guess.
Yeah. Um, so since you didn't reach out to them, like how can they better reach you? Because I think there's a lot of responsibility on those services to do a good enough job, like making students aware that they exist.
I think maybe like just reaching out to the students, like maybe when all this is over, have like a mental health event,
Yes.
like where they're out in like the foyer or whatever, and they're like putting on a like act or whatever of somebody going through like a really hard time mentally, and like a therapist walks by or whatever and is like, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? Is there any way that I can help you? Something like that. As of now, I think the only thing that they can do is like reach out, maybe like give a phone call or shoot an email, something like that, to where it's more personal, to where it's, where it's not like an email from the school going, have mental health resources, are you utilizing them? Because that is kind of a very generic thing. I know for me personally, I like it whenever somebody reaches out and it's personal. It's more,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more personal, so it means more to me.
Yeah, speaking for myself, like, yeah, I totally agree with you 100%. Like, uh, there's kind of like this more, it seems like more genuine when it's personal as opposed to just being
Yeah.
like an automated email that's sent out to everyone. So
Yes.
I definitely agree. Um, and so what can make the pandemic and specifically online schooling easier?
What can make the pandemic easier? Well, I guess if it never existed,
Yeah.
online schooling easier. That's kind of hard because you're kind of stuck at home, and as much as, well, I mean, I guess making like certain courses more interactive, like I know anatomy and physiology, that's kind of hard to do online. So like maybe I know like for when I took biology, we had our labs like through like this what is it called? It was like through a like a virtual thing, kind of like
Oh, like a simulation.
yeah, like a simulation, and that definitely, even though it wasn't in person, that definitely helped me understand some of the concepts and the material that we were learning.
Yeah.
So I think like science classes and like anatomy classes, that classes that require more hands-on could definitely do that. Um, Other than that, I don't know. I think in person would be the next step, but there are some people, understandably, that are hesitant about that, and just there's a lot of unknown factors in regarding that.
Yeah. So like how did the past year affect you financially, maybe emotionally, and like specifically on your mental health?
Financially, I actually benefited a lot from the pandemic because our the my the place that I work at, the company raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, no matter, even if you were like if you were just hired within that week that they raised the minimum wage, or if you were there for like a year or two, they raised it to $15 an hour. And then on top of that, they gave out like $200 bonuses for for I think like the beginning of since the pandemic until like the summer, and then they did it again like in the fall, and then they did it again for the winter, for like winter these past couple of months, just to like say thank you to the employees for all their hard work and dedication through this really challenging time.
Yeah.
In terms of my mental health and emotional health, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all over the place, honestly. Like there were days where I just wished this whole past year was a dream. And there were days where I just literally just wanted where I where I would have completely where I would have been fine if I got hit by a bus, honestly. So and then there were times where I'm like, okay, I can do this. It might be hard, but we're gonna get through it. So I mean, there definitely a lot of ups and downs, but I think there were more downs than there were ups.
Okay. And would you say that the load and the expectations of the RCCD faculty were like manageable and fair over the past year?
Um, I think so. Just certain professors and certain courses just kind of expect a little more and don't have, I guess, reasonable expectations and deadlines for students. Because yes, we are all online and stuff, but we all are dealing with other things besides school. Whereas before the whole pandemic started, we were able to be like, okay, I'm going to be working this day, so I can't I can only do this amount of schoolwork, and then the next day I have all this free time to study for this test and stuff. So I think that some classes just have an unreasonable amount of workload and expectations that students could meet, but just under with everything this past year, all the uncertainty, and all of just the just the mental declining mental health. It's been really hard for students to feel motivated enough to reach those expectations.
Yeah. So, to what degree would you say that this kind of uncertainty, change in financial status, and like change in mental health, to what degree has that affected your capacity to achieve your educational goals, if it has?
Um, the question was what again? I got the last part.
Yeah. So, like, to what degree did the change in mental health and financial status possibly, and uh, this kind of new uncertainty that we have, has it affected your ability to achieve your educational goals, and in what ways?
Yes, it definitely has affected my ability and my like schooling path. In terms of like there there have been times where I'm like, okay, well, if this happens again, or if like something worse happens 10 years from now, will I be out of a job? Because a lot of people lost their jobs at the beginning of the pandemic, and there are some people that still haven't gotten back their jobs, even though, even though vaccines have been rolling out and things are starting to get better. So I've kind of shifted my career path to from something that was very specific to kind of it's within the same like department or career career area, I guess. It's just not as specific or direct as it used to be.
Yeah. So, like, for more job security.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Are there any like strategies that you developed over the past year that you use to improve your mental health?
Um, as much as I would like to say yes, if I'm being real honest, no, because I'm the type of person that likes to get everything done as soon as I can. So like whenever my professor uploads a couple of lecture videos that are like 15 minutes long each, and there's like 5 of them, I I guess the sane person would break those up into like, okay, well, I'm gonna do 2 of these today and then do the rest tomorrow. I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it all in one sitting, even if I start at 8 a.m. and I'm still sitting at my chair by 7:15 p.m. I'm just, yeah, so no, I haven't really developed any coping mechanisms or like strategies on how to improve my mental health, unfortunately.
Uh, do you plan on returning to school this fall at 100% capacity in the classroom?
That depends on the courses and classes that I will be taking. If they offer um, in-person in-person teaching, then I think if I feel like I need to be in class for that particular subject, then I will definitely be on campus. But if it's a class that I feel like I can handle pretty well online, then I will just have stick with it online.
And so, what are some concerns that you might have regarding the return to in person potentially?
Uh, concerns I have in regards to returning to in person.
Yeah.
Um, well, I have concerns of, I guess, like certain people getting upset over others, you know, doing their own thing, or which is understandable and all, but like you can't control everyone. Like if that makes sense. Like with the whole mask thing, which is is I understand, some people don't want to wear their masks, and other people feel like it's their right to tell that person they have to wear their mask and get up in their face and be confrontational. I just feel like there's no need for that. Like if that person who isn't wearing their masks suffers the consequences, then that's on them. You don't have to be the mask police and enforce your enforce just go around and playing playing a RoboCop basically.
Yeah. Uh, so what kind of support do you feel like you need to be prepared for that transition back? Would it be like you said, maybe like not mandating it for mask? And is there like anything else that you feel like you might need?
Yeah. Well, with the masks, I have no issue with because I personally have no issue with them because I wear them all the time at work, so I'm kind of used to it. But I just know some people can't stand it for like if they had to wear it, if they had a choice between wearing a mask for 12 hours or literally falling off a cliff and dying, they would choose falling off a cliff and die. I just so I don't know. I just feel like that is like if a school or like organization requires you to wear a mask when you enter their doors, you should obey the rule, even if you disagree with it, because we all have to do things that we don't agree with. Um, so yeah. So in terms, and then like the question was, sorry, kind of
Because
topic.
like, is there anything that you want the school to provide to feel more prepared?
Um, the only thing I can think of would be more accommodations, I guess, and like being, I guess, more understanding to people who feel certain ways about, the pandemic, and then just also like understanding that we are all we all might be going through this together, but some of us are just kind of going through it to a deeper, more severe degree than others. Like, I think it's kind of unreasonable and stupid for schools to kind of have students meet certain expectations in classes and stuff like that when a student could where like let's say at the beginning of the semester they were beginning to meet those expectations, but then like a life altering situation happened, like their spouse got COVID and died, and they have to work more, and on the top of that they're going to school, and they're not able to meet these expectations that the school or this a certain classes expects them to meet, and by not meeting those expectations they are failing. So I think that is unreasonable and kind of needs to change.
Yeah, so like in other words, like there kind of needs to be more flexibility because during the pandemic,
Yes.
everything is kind of up in the air.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that actually. Um, can you offer any concluding thoughts, statements, recommendations that can be better that can be done to better support you?
um yeah, I guess basically it would be nice for I guess teachers to like I don't know, show a little more grace to students and stuff, because they can take. It's funny because and I don't mean to diss any professors or anything like that, but I just feel like there's kind of a double standard with, especially with online classes, because students have a certain deadline that they have to meet with like assignments and stuff like that, and it's kind of unfair for professors who who set up these deadlines, but then when a student turns in an assignment, like, and then it takes the professor like literally the next month to grade that assignment. It's ridiculous. It's
Yeah, yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thank you so much for being interviewed today, Person C. I really liked all the feedback you gave, all your responses. I think it'll definitely be very useful to kind of laying the foundation for change. And so hopefully with this as a community college district, we're able to kind of bring that change and to have more of a discussion on mental health and how they can better accommodate students. So thank you so much for being interviewed by me today, and I wish
You're
you
welcome.
all the best in your educational journey and all the best um, toward going back to normalcy and toward kind of
You too.
finding uh, life after pandemic.
Thank you. You too. Good luck with the rest of your project.
Thank you.
At face value, all the interviews cannot be more different. Person A, a Caucasian straight working male, believed online courses were more or less manageable, while responses from Person B indicate a lack of displeasure with the new medium of education. Person C, on the other hand, was more vocal about the unreasonable expectations he faced from instructors he felt lacked flexibility and empathy. What we find is that Person A and Person B, being straight male and female working students, maintained the balance they had between education and working responsibilities before the pandemic. Person C, a straight Hispanic working male, is in a financially better place than pre-COVID lockdown, but expresses more struggle with mental health and the pressure of online courses. He wants more personal wellness checks from our CCD mental health services and more understanding from faculty. Because of this condition, he's more focused on the mental health assistance for students than the return to in-person education this fall. Person A and Person B question the ethical validity of a vaccine mandate. Overall, we can conclude that there needs to be expansion of mental health services and inclusiveness for students who do not want to take the vaccine in order to return to in-person learning this fall. Like Person C said, no one should be forced to do something with their body they are not comfortable with. Students struggle in different ways. Different challenges conceive different concerns. If we are going to make progress, create unity and peace for all, we need to listen. We need to welcome discussion, reflection, and have the humility to do better. If you are in need of basic resources such as financial aid or food, click the link in the description below for assistance. You are not alone.